It was one of those searing hot California mornings, the kind where the air already feels heavy with history and maybe just a little bit of fear, but mostly pride. The kind of pride that vibrates off the concrete at Fort Trident during a Maritime Special Forces graduation. But I didn't feel any of that, not really, because I was Caleb Vance, and on that day, I was just the guy in the faded green maintenance shirt, the janitor. I took my seat way out on the periphery, practically leaning against the chain-link fence, far from the polished brass and the perfect rows of military families, because you just know where you belong, right? My boots were scuffed, smelling faintly of bleach and floor wax, and my uniform shirt, the one with the inevitable motor oil stain on the pocket, it was a stark contrast to the immaculate dress blues waiting out on the parade deck. My son, Liam Vance, he was out there, seconds away from earning that trident, and all I wanted was to catch that one single moment. A moment I'd spent 15 years scrubbing toilets and fixing broken pipes to afford him. I didn't need applause, didn't need a pat on the back. I just needed to see my boy breathe in his future. The gate guards, a couple of kids barely old enough to shave, they definitely noticed me, and you could practically hear the judgment clicking in their heads, like they were running a quick security check on guy who doesn't belong. The young one, Corporal Sims, he squinted at my tattered invitation, then at my shirt, then back at the invite, as if expecting the paper to burst into flames, and he asked, "Sir, this is the MSF graduation ceremony, not base general access. Are you sure you're in the right place?" And I just gave him that quiet, weary smile I perfected over the years, the one that says, "I know, kid, I know." And I told him, "My son, Liam Vance, is graduating. This is the best I've got." There was no anger, no defensiveness, just the plain, simple truth, which is often the hardest thing to hear. They let me through eventually, but their eyes followed me, and I felt that familiar, heavy blanket of social shame, the ghost of my present life, settle over my shoulders as I found that lonely metal folding chair and settled in. I was watching the empty stage, letting the noise of the assembling families, the excited chatter, the flashes of expensive cameras, just wash over me, trying to keep my breathing even, slow, and measured, the way they teach you when the world is chaos, And that's when I felt it again, that familiar phantom weight of the past pressing down, because tucked under the rolled cuff of my sleeve, hidden mostly by shadow and age, was the ink. The trident serpent. It wasn't just a tattoo, it was a brand, a marker for a chapter of my life I had spent 2 decades desperately trying to bury beneath endless gallons of pine sol. Meanwhile, out on the field, Liam stood rigid in formation, his posture perfect, chin up, but his eyes were darting, searching the bleachers, scanning the perimeter with a restless urgency that felt oddly familiar, like a clock ticking down to 0, and he couldn't find me. He whispered to his swim buddy. I told him to come. He said he'd be here, and his teammate joked back. Maybe he's stuck in traffic, or maybe he's just embarrassed about having to wear a uniform and decided to hide. And Liam managed a tight, half-hearted laugh, but inside, that little knot of worry was tightening, because his dad, the man who worked triple shifts and never, ever let him down, was missing on the biggest day of his life. Liam loved me, I know he did, but he only knew the janitor, the quiet guy who listened a lot, and said almost nothing about the time before 2009, the time of the Citadel incident. The band started up, flags snapped, and the graduates marched in, a beautiful, powerful sight that made my chest swell with a pride that didn't need an audience, didn't need recognition. It was just pure, raw fatherhood. I didn't move from my chair, didn't wave, just fixed my eyes on Liam, watched him straighten up, watched the focus in his gaze, and I thought, "You made it, kid. You got out. You got your future." That was the only recognition I needed. Then, Commodore Eleanor Ellie Hayes, a woman who wore her rank like it was tailored specifically to her skin, stepped up behind the podium with Chief Petty Officer, CPO, Marcus Rock Sterling, a man whose reputation preceded him by miles. She was giving one of those standard, inspiring opening addresses, her voice clear and commanding, but her eyes, they were doing the same thing mine had done for years, scanning the periphery, looking for the unexpected. And that's when it happened. Her gaze, sharp and precise, landed on me. Not on the uniform, not on the lonely chair, but on that tiny, subtle swirl of faded black and gray peeking out from under my rolled sleeve, the undeniable mark of the trident serpent. I saw her pause, just a fraction of a second, but enough for her composure to flicker, like a brief power outage in a massive system. No, it can't be. Her mind must have been screaming, because that mark, that insignia, it was only written about in classified reports, the ones kept in steel lockers, the ones that mentioned the single, unyielding combat medic who saved CPO Sterling's entire fire team and then vanished, refusing every commendation, refusing the spotlight, refusing the title, the ghost medic. She nudged Sterling discreetly, barely moving her lips. But Sterling, a man whose life I'd literally held in my shaking, blood-soaked hands years ago, he didn't even need words. He followed her gaze, his eyes narrowing, and the moment they locked onto the tattoo, his face went white. I mean, drained. The Master Chief, the man who never flinched, who was the very definition of discipline, missed a beat in his own sentence, his voice cracking, the microphone momentarily picking up that unnatural silence, and the whole ceremony seemed to inhale. Sterling, without taking his eyes off me, whispered, "Ma'am, is that?" Hayes, struggling to maintain her professional composure, nodded slowly, her voice tight with disbelief and an almost reverence. "Yes, Rock. I think that's Mason Cole." I felt the blood rush from my head. Mason Cole. They still used my old name. I had been Caleb Vance for so long. The name Mason felt like a foreign language, a ghost of someone else's life. I pushed back slightly in my chair, ready to melt into the fence line, to become invisible, but it was too late. Sterling, the legendary CPO Marcus Sterling, the man who was supposed to be honoring the graduates, abruptly dropped the mic. Literally, it clattered on the podium, and with heavy, deliberate strides that cut through the silence like a knife, he walked off the stage. Hayes followed, her perfect white uniform a stark, shocking contrast to the maintenance worker he was walking toward. The crowd broke into a confusion of whispers. The officers exchanged startled, panicked glances. And Liam, my son, watching from the second row, felt the world tilt on its axis. He saw the most powerful enlisted man on the base, a living legend, walking straight toward the man he thought was his janitor father. Sterling stopped directly in front of me. I stood up out of pure, deep-seated military instinct, though I hadn't worn my rank in years. The attention was a physical weight, crushing me, exposing me. This was the exact opposite of everything I had wanted. I was here for Liam, only Liam, and now my past, my trauma, the thing I had buried so deeply, was screaming its way back into his life, right in his proudest moment. I looked at Liam, standing there, shattered, and all I could think was, I broke my promise to keep the darkness away. I knew, with a sick certainty, that the confrontation to come would be far more painful than any firefight. I'm sorry, but this is where I need to take a quick break, because what happened next, the silence, the shock, and the eventual, explosive confrontation between a father and his son, it needs its own space, its own moment to breathe. We'll pick up right here, with Liam running toward me, demanding answers. I stood there, exposed, under the relentless California sun, feeling the gaze of hundreds of people, admiration, curiosity, shock. But the only eyes that mattered were Liam's, and they were filled with pain and confusion that cut me to the bone. The ceremony completely dissolved. The moment the graduates were dismissed, Liam didn't go celebrate. He didn't hug his teammates. He ran. He ran straight across the parade deck, cutting through the stunned, parting crowd, straight for me. His jaw was clenched, his eyes blazing with a mixture of anger and betrayal that was harder to face than any enemy. He stopped inches from me, boots scuffing the concrete, chest heaving. "Dad," he choked out, voice raw. "Why didn't you tell me? All these years. All the questions I asked, all the avoidance. You let me think you were just the guy who cleaned the floors." He was trembling, fists tight at his sides. "A janitor, Dad? When you were out there saving lives? When you were a legend?" I tried to reach out, but he flinched, and I pulled my hand back, feeling the distance between us widen into a canyon. "Son, I didn't want you to carry the weight of my past," I whispered, the words tasting like dust. "I wanted you to choose your own path, not walk in my shadow, not feel obligated to be the ghost medic's son." "But I didn't even know your path," he shouted, his voice cracking with the vulnerability of a young man who suddenly realizes his entire history is a lie. How am I supposed to understand who I am if I don't even know who you are? You were fighting the war alone, Dad, and you shut me out. He was right. Every searing word was true. I closed my eyes, letting the memories rush in. The dust, the fire, the blood, the faces. Liam, I said, softer now, steadier, because this was the moment of truth. The things I saw, the men I lost, the parts of me I had to bury just to come home alive. I didn't want that darkness following you. I saved 11 men, Liam, but every single night for 15 years, I could only see the face of the one I couldn't save. Corporal Dean. He trusted me, and I couldn't get him out in time. That was the burden, the invisible weight I carried in the cleaning cart, in the solitude of the night shifts. I didn't hide from glory, I hid from my failure. Liam's anger melted into profound, aching understanding. Dad, that wasn't your fault, he pleaded, tears finally spilling over his cheeks. But those 11 men lived because of you, and I lived because you came home to me. You didn't come home broken, Dad. You came home brave. He stepped forward, closing the space, and pulled me into an embrace that was fierce, tight, and forgiving. My arms, hesitant at first, wrapped around him, holding on to the one thing that had kept me alive, and for the first time in decades, I let myself be held. I'm not angry anymore, he whispered into my shoulder. Just hurt. But I'm proud of you, Dad. So proud. The applause that followed wasn't the ceremony kind. It was the warm, reverent kind, the sound of a community recognizing a quiet miracle. CPO Sterling, seeing the reunion, stepped forward again, microphone in hand. Before we continue, we must acknowledge something more, he announced, his voice booming with renewed pride. He told the full story this time. How Mason Cole crawled through open fire twice, using torn pieces of his own uniform when supplies ran out, keeping 11 men alive while the city burned. Hayes then stepped up to the podium, her presence commanding silence. We honor bravery in uniform, but sometimes the greatest bravery happens in silence. She looked directly at me. Petty Officer Mason Cole, would you join us on stage? Liam squeezed my arm. Dad, please go. So I went. I walked up the steps, every eye on me, feeling exposed and humble. I didn't grip the microphone. I just stood there, looking out at the sea of faces, then down at my son. I'm not a man of speeches. I began, my voice low but steady. I'm not even sure I'm the man everyone here thinks I am. I've lived a quiet life, sometimes by choice, sometimes because I couldn't carry what came before. But every day, I tried to be the kind of father my son deserved. I swallowed hard, looking straight at Liam. War teaches you survival, but if you're blessed, it teaches you what you're living for. My reason was always my son. Seeing him standing here today, becoming something greater than I ever dreamed. That is the real honor. The crowd rose in a standing ovation, not wild, but profound, a wave of respect that washed over me and, finally, eased the burden. As the formal ceremony finally ended, I found myself standing near the edge of the courtyard, letting the attention fade. Then I saw him, a figure moving slowly through the crowd, leaning heavily on a crutch. His navy uniform was older, his left leg stiff, dragging slightly. His right sleeve was neatly pinned where an arm once was. But it was his face, older, wearier, that slammed the air from my lungs. It was Sergeant Rex Harrison, the one who almost didn't make it out. He stopped in front of me, his one hand extended. You remember me, Cole? He said softly. My voice came out rough. Yeah, I remember you, Rex. Thought you were dead, I managed to say. Rex gave a shaky laugh. Almost was. Been looking for you for years, but you just dropped off the grid. He looked at Liam, who stood frozen beside me. This your boy, Aiden Cole, sir, Liam said respectfully. Rex smiled. Your old man saved my life, kid. I walked for my daughter's 5th birthday because of this man. Every day I get to wake up and be a father. Every one of those moments came from what your dad did for me in that hellhole. Rex tapped the ground with his crutch. You disappeared before I could thank you, Mason. So, I'm thanking you now. He placed his hand on my shoulder, his grip tight. You think you walked away from the battlefield alone, but you didn't. Every life you saved walked with you. In that moment, the ghost of Corporal Dean finally began to rest, because I saw that the 12, in some way, became 12 lives lived, not one life lost. as the sun began to dip, painting the sky in violent shades of orange and rose. Hayes, Commodore Eleanor Ellie Hayes, approached me again, alone this time. You slipped away, she observed, her voice soft and measured. I'm not good with crowds, I admitted. It still hurts less when I'm not hiding from it. She looked out at the ocean, then back at me, the great Commodore, the unflappable leader, suddenly looking like just a woman carrying her own scars. Mason, what do you need now? She asked. The question caught me completely off guard. No one had asked me what I needed in 15 years. I'm not sure, I finally admitted. But I think I'm ready to find out. A soft, unexpected smile touched her lips, a genuine smile that had nothing to do with rank or duty. I'm glad you said that, she murmured, gathering her courage. Because if you're not busy this weekend, I'd like to invite you to dinner. Not to talk about the war or the past. I want to talk about the future. I blinked, the weight of the past finally lifting enough for me to see the hope in front of me. I'd like that, Sarah, I whispered, using her first name naturally for the first time. The silence settled between us, not awkward, but peaceful, as we watched the sun dip into the Pacific, two weary souls at the edge of something new. And that's the truth of it, folks. I was Caleb Vance, the maintenance guy, the ghost medic, but on that day, I finally became Mason Cole, a father who let his son see him, flaws and all, and a man who finally let himself be saved. But here's the kicker, and I want to hear your take on this. Was I right to keep that massive, life-altering secret from Liam for so long, even if it was meant to protect him from the darkness? Or did I do him a greater disservice by robbing him of the truth, of his full inheritance, of knowing who his hero really was? Let me know in the comments below. Does a father's protective silence ever justify the lie? Hit that like button if you think the truth always wins, and subscribe for more stories about the hidden heroes among us.